Imagine a house so tormented that it turns on its own family. In 1878, in the quiet town of Amherst, Nova Scotia. This wasn't just a story, it was a nightmare that unfolded for a young woman named Esther Cox. What began as a series of strange, unsettling events would escalate into one of the most terrifying and well-documented hauntings in history. This is the story of the Great Amherst Mystery, a case so bizarre that it drew in skeptics, scientists, and an entire community, leaving them all asking the same question: what was inside that house? The terror began subtly, almost innocently. It started after Esther, just 18 years old, was the victim of a deeply traumatic assault by a close friend. In the weeks following the attack, a strange chill seemed to settle over her family home. Late at night, Esther and her sister Jenny would hear soft, rhythmic tapping noises coming from inside their shared bedroom wall. At first, they dismissed it as mice or the old house settling. But the taps grew louder, more insistent, until they sounded like a fist pounding against the wood from within. The family searched, tore at the walls, but found nothing. The noise, however, was just the beginning. Soon, the unseen force grew bolder. Blankets and bedsheets were violently ripped off Esther and her sister as they slept, leaving them shivering in the cold, dark room. Objects began to move on their own. A sewing box would slide across a table. Forks and knives would clatter in their drawers or even lift into the air before crashing to the floor. The family was terrified, but they were also trapped. This was their home. Where could they go? The phenomenon seemed to center around Esther, as if she were a magnet for this malevolent energy. Her family, consisting of her sisters, brother, and brother-in-law, could only watch in helpless fear. The entity wasn't just a poltergeist, a noisy, chaotic force. It seemed to have an intelligence, a sinister personality. It communicated through a series of loud, deliberate knocks. 1 knock for no, 3 for yes. Family members and neighbors would gather in the small house, asking it questions. They'd ask, "Are you a spirit?" 3 knocks. "Are you from hell?" 3 knocks. The answers sent a shiver down everyone's spine. This thing claimed to be a devil, a demon that had come for Esther. It even gave itself names through these coded knocks, calling itself Bob, Nickel, and other demonic figures. It was playful, but its games were cruel. It would torment Esther, pinching her, scratching her, and causing her body to swell up painfully before their very eyes, only to return to normal moments later. Word of the haunting spread like wildfire through Amherst. The Cox cottage became a spectacle. Neighbors, clergymen, and local doctors came to witness the events for themselves, many arriving as staunch skeptics, determined to expose a fraud. They would sit in the parlor, watching in stunned silence as furniture moved without a touch, or as stones and other small objects materialized out of thin air and pelted the walls. One of the most chilling moments came when a visiting doctor, Dr. Carrot, witnessed a message being scratched into the plaster wall above Esther's bed. Letter by letter, an invisible hand carved the words, "Esther Cox, you are mine to kill." The threat was no longer implied. It was written for all to see. Panic set in. This wasn't a prank. This was a death threat from an unseen enemy. The entity's violence escalated. Mysterious fires would suddenly erupt in different parts of the house. A pile of clothes would spontaneously combust, or a curtain would burst into flames. The family lived in constant fear, dousing small fires day and night. The entity even started throwing lit matches at Esther. The family tried everything they could think of. They brought in priests to perform exorcisms, but the rituals only seemed to anger the entity, making the disturbances worse. The house itself felt like it was at war with them. The air was thick with a sense of dread, and the smell of sulfur often hung in the rooms. Desperate for a solution, Esther tried to escape. She moved in with friends and neighbors, hoping to leave the terror behind. But the haunting wasn't tied to the house. It was tied to her. Wherever Esther went, the phenomena followed. In one home, the barn mysteriously caught fire and burned to the ground shortly after her arrival. The owner, convinced she was cursed, ordered her to leave. She was becoming a pariah in her own town, feared and ostracized. People who had once been her friends now crossed the street to avoid her. She was utterly alone, hounded by a force no one could understand or stop. During this time, a man named Walter Hubble, an actor with an interest in the supernatural, heard about the case and traveled to Amherst. He moved into the Cox home to investigate and document the events firsthand. For several weeks, Hubble witnessed the full spectrum of the haunting. He saw objects fly, heard the intelligent knocks, and watched as Esther was physically tormented by the invisible force. He became convinced of its authenticity and saw an opportunity. Hubble took Esther on a speaking tour, presenting her as a genuine supernatural phenomenon. But the public displays were a disaster. The entity was unpredictable. Sometimes it would perform on cue, thrilling audiences. Other times, it would remain silent, making Esther and Hubble look like frauds. The tour was a failure, and a defeated Esther returned to Amherst. After nearly a year of relentless torment, the disturbances began to fade. The knocks grew fainter, the objects stopped moving, and the physical attacks ceased. As mysteriously as it began, the great Amherst mystery seemed to be over. Esther Cox went on to live a relatively normal life, though she was forever marked by the events of that year. She married twice and moved away, trying to put the past behind her. But the story lived on, immortalized in Walter Hubble's book, The Great Amherst Mystery, which became a foundational text in paranormal research. So what really happened in that small house in Nova Scotia? Skeptics have offered numerous theories over the years. Some believe Esther, suffering from severe psychological trauma, unconsciously manifested the phenomena herself through psychokinesis, the ability to move objects with the mind. Others maintain it was an elaborate hoax, a prank orchestrated by Esther and her sister to gain attention or escape their mundane lives. Yet, this theory struggles to explain how they could have fooled so many independent witnesses, including doctors, scientists, and clergymen, or how they could have started fires and moved heavy furniture with everyone watching. To this day, the case remains one of history's greatest unsolved paranormal mysteries. Was it a tortured spirit, a demonic entity, a complex psychological event, or a masterful deception? The sheer number of credible witnesses and the intensity of the recorded events make it difficult to dismiss entirely. The house on Princess Street is long gone, but the chilling tale of Esther Cox and the entity that claimed her serves as a haunting reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones we cannot see. The story forces us to question the boundaries of our reality and consider the possibility that there are forces at work in our world that we may never fully understand. Thank you so much for watching. If you're fascinated by unsolved mysteries and stories from the paranormal world, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next deep dive. What do you think happened to Esther Cox? Let me know your theories down in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious.